A very good evening to you. I'm Pearson Bowen. The Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association are the most recent entities appealing for some relief for members from the new municipal solid waste tax. Ryan Broom reports.
The new municipal solid waste tax will impact most heavily on the key tourism sector. This is the view of Sunil Chatrani, president of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, who says some hotel property owners have received bills in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. In a statement, Mr. Chatrani notes that the highest valued lands on the island are usually the beachfront parcels, where fortunately or unfortunately 99% of hotels are located. For this reason, he says the sector will bear the brunt of the tax, at a time when it currently seeking financial relief in the form of promised duty-free concessions that are yet to be received. He says due to the nature of the hospitality business, most of the real estate is owned by the operators who, in order to remain competitive, make substantial reinvestment in their properties on an ongoing basis. Mr. Chatrani says the new tax will therefore severely impact on property owners' ability to reinvest. Meanwhile, President of the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Tracy Shuffler, says the chamber has a major concern with the basis being used to calculate the new tax. She says it's not equitable.
While we can't determine an exact indicator of solid waste produced, for certain the value of improved lands has no bearing on it. The tax, therefore, is not equitable and will disproportionately impact pensioners, some community-based associations, and businesses with large land holdings, which often yield poor returns on investment.
To alleviate the impact on businesses, Ms. Shuffler proposes that those businesses currently owed monies by the government be allowed to offset the new tax fully against the long outstanding receivables where applicable.
As we have stated before, there are a number of companies who are struggling to collect monies owed to them by government for goods and services sold. Considering the one view of the taxpayer now in place at the Barbados Revenue Authority, the Chamber would propose that where applicable, the taxpayer should be allowed to fully offset this new tax against monies owed by government. We would also ask that to ease cash flow challenges, the penalties and interest be waived on the first payment until the due date of the second payment at the end of the year.
The Chamber head has further recommended that all companies be allowed to pay the full tax between now and the December 31st deadline without incurring any penalties or interest. She says the BCCI expects that government will hold to its promise that the municipal tax is intended to be a temporary revenue-raising measure for 18 months and not apportion further burden on the already pressured business community and general public. Ryan Broom, CBC News.
Well, in your take tonight, where we hear from you, we want to know, do you think hotels should be exempt from the municipal solid waste tax? Text your answer, yes or no, to short code 8111. We'll share the results at the end of the news. Well, repeal, review, and do what is right for the people of Barbados. That's challenge from opposition leader Mia Mottley to government. Speaking from the opposition offices earlier today, Mottley reiterated that the municipal solid waste tax is unfair and ill-conceived. She said, along with being burdensome, she's received reports from the legal fraternity that members have been informally notified of a policy by the Barbados Revenue Authority that land tax certificates will not be issued until the owner of the property has paid the solid waste tax. She says if this is the BRA's policy, it has no basis in law.
Now, there is no lawful authority whatsoever for the Barbados Revenue Agency to withhold land tax certificates upon the request of a person who is seeking to transfer land. And therefore, we would want urgently not only that the government do right, because that is a decision for cabinet, but until such time as the government makes that announcement, that the Barbados Revenue Agency issues a statement recognizing that it cannot seek to withhold land tax certificates because people have not paid solid waste tax or any other tax for that matter.
Well, when contacted, Revenue Commissioner Margaret Sivers declined comment on the matter. Prime Minister Frundle Stewart remembered former Chief Commissioner Emeritus of the Barbados Boy Scouts Association, Basil Forbes, as an outstanding member of the Barbadian Society who gave of his best in his every endeavor. His comments came today at the headquarters of the Democratic Labour Party on George Street, where the body of Mr. Forbes was reposed for viewing. Mr. Stewart also noted his many contributions to the Barbadian society, for which he was not well recognized.
He was a great man, one of Barbados's unsung heroes, really, because although people knew about his contribution to furniture manufacturing, he was Barbados's trade commissioner during the 94 years as a Prime Minister. He was chairman of the National Cultural Foundation and helped to supervise our Crop Over Festival. He was a many-sided man that contributed much, not only to the Democratic Labour Party, but to Barbados as a whole.
In addition, the Prime Minister lauded Mr. Forbes for his devotion to the Methodist faith, noting that his Christian influence was always felt.
He was also a devout Methodist. He threw his whole personality into Methodism. He believed fervently in God and in God's purpose. And not infrequently, therefore, at our meetings, Basil Forbes would be called upon to say the opening prayers or the closing prayers, depending on what was required.
Dear Clark, I've made a fascinating discovery, the institutional water cooler. Its gravitational pull sucks people from their workstations at the busiest times of day to stand around it and chat about emerging global trends like, will pink be in fashion next season? Meanwhile, the world slows to a stop as it waits in line to be served. I don't see that trend at Globe Finance.
Globe Finance. Think outside the bank.
When it comes to their financial service, slow is out, swift is in.
Cola Kick Energy, we got the energy, African energy, drink up the energy. Cola Kick.
Raw cola nut energy from Africa.
Called it the most wonderful time of the year. The clock is ticking and the time is near. Sunday, July 20th.
It's Soca on the Hill. Kes the Band is coming. Edwin Yearwood and Crossfire. Cassie, Mikey, and Blood of Soca Cartel. Blacks, Little Rick, Skinny Fabulous, Gord, Red Plastic Bag, the best of Crop Over, and more still to come. So get your $55 tickets now before the price goes up.
Sunday, July 20th.
Farley Hill National Park, Barbados. Soca on the Hill. A million ways to party.
The recovery effort has started in Thomas Gap, Westbury Road, St. Michael, after a massive fire there yesterday afternoon. Lisa Broom visited the area and filed this report.
Well, the focus has shifted now here in Thomas Gap, Westbury Road, from saving possessions and saving lives to picking up the pieces after the terrible fire that destroyed 5 houses yesterday afternoon. I understand that the cleanup started from 11 last night, and when they were finished, they came back as early as 5 this morning to go again.
Smoking embers, burnt galvanized, destroyed clothes, and other barely recognizable personal possessions. Those were the scenes which greeted the CBC team this morning at Thomas Gap. The teamwork that helped save lives yesterday was evident again as a group of residents, seemingly led by Enzo and Fabian, was busy in the salvage effort. One of yesterday's heroes, although he doesn't want to be called that, is postman Wesley Haynes, who rescued Norma Wickham from one of the burning houses. For him, it was all in a day's work.
Just saw the smoke, the fire, and I just reacted because I knew the old lady, Miss Besby, is bedridden and she'd be there most of the time alone. So I just went looking for her. Luckily for her, she was by a neighbor. So I just went there and got her out. And I also have a mom that is bedridden, so I hope that if anything like this ever happens, somebody could come and help out once I'm not around.
For Stephen Edwards, it was a close call. His home a mere yards away from the group that was burnt, and that was only slightly damaged.
When I get there, I thought it was only one house fire, but I was shocked to see all these houses burn out.
Luckily for Stephen, his house is insured. He says his neighbours, when they rebuild, should consider doing the same.
Seeing that things is very rough, right? I think the insurance could look into that and maybe reduce the premium on the houses or whatever.
The residents say their main concern, in addition to getting back on their feet, is getting the 5 dogs burnt to death in one of the houses to get that cleaned up so that there are no environmental or health hazards. Reporting from Westbury Road, St. Michael, I'm Lisa Broom for CBC News.
UWI Principal Sir Hilary Beckles is telling government to invest more, not less, in the Cayville campus, calling it the answer to the economic woes the country is facing. His latest appeal came this morning at the opening of the 13th Annual Association of Caribbean Higher Education Administrators Conference at the university. Sir Hilary's comments also come on the heels of a recent study done by economists at the campus that shows that UWI Cayville accounts for 2.5% of GDP, $200 million in economic activity a year, and generates about $80 million in foreign exchange annually, more than Barbados rum or sugar exports. Sir Hilary has expressed surprise at those who have been questioning the validity of that survey.
You would imagine, therefore, that that information should have been welcomed with enthusiasm. And you would have imagined, therefore, that a rational response to that information would have been, okay, well, if that is true, how then can we use the educational infrastructure to promote further foreign exchange earnings, to promote more economic growth, and to help us to build the potential for our flight out of poverty? You would imagine that would have been a rational response.
Sir Hilary also wants government to send a message to the International Monetary Fund.
Should we not tell the IMF that in small islands with no abundant natural resources and where the people constitutes the primary resource, the people should not be seen as consumers of education, but the state should see that the investment in the citizens is an investment in the economy and in the society. It is not an expenditure, it is an investment.
The Barbados Tourism Authority has started marketing the Crop Over Festival in a slightly different way, and according to the acting president, Petra Roach, that strategy has been working. She says they've moved away from marketing the festival solely to the diaspora and integrated it into the BTA's mainstream activities.
We've got a sponsorship with Chelsea. You could see the Crop Over girls there. You could hear the pulsating sound of the steel band in the background. When you go to Hampshire Cricket Club, again, that's a very integral part of the activity that we do for the Barbados Promotional Days. In the US, we've had it where we had the girls also at the New York Times show and also at the American Express Global Bazaar. And these are all very established consumer shows. So rather than just seeing it as a festival that takes place for 2 months in June and July, we see it as a representation of all that is good about Barbados.
Ms. Roach says the Caribbean market provides very strong numbers for the festival, and this year, about 80 revelers from Guadeloupe are expected on the island for Kadooment Day. The BTA president adds that 5 new charters are also booked from the French Caribbean. The number of international media has also increased from 17 to 32 representatives.